I read this book which said that people who tend to leave their jobs quickly are actually running away from control. They're trying to find freedom in life. I was like, damn, this is me, dude. And I didn't know I was changing so many roles.
So I gave only one attempt. Even when I was giving my attempt, I knew that okay, if I don't make it, I have a certain backup or a certain different plan B to go to. And I think that thinking of plan B is quite important.
People kind of start losing rationality. That's how human beings are. We kind of get succumb to our identities. Who am I? I'm a UPSC aspirant. And now there are shows that glorify UPSC aspirations, right? How much of AI are you using on your projects these days?
Quite a lot, quite a lot. Yeah.
And this is ChatGPT or other versions? And if you can name, what would those be? A lot of people are still stuck and they have this fear of being left behind. Yeah, I am not able to think as clearly as Anushila was at one point of time. What would be your message to someone who's kind of feeling left behind in the UPSC journey? Welcome, Anushila, to the Shatakshi show. It's a very meaningful moment for me, given someone I taught during GGI is on the other side of the table and getting interviewed. Personally, very, very proud moment for me as well. I know your journey professionally and slightly personally as well, but would be absolutely amazing if you can introduce yourself in your own words to the world. Welcome once again.
No, so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me, Shatakshi. And like you said, it's a really full circle moment almost to do this since my journey started with GGI 5 years back, and now we're kind of just reflecting on how life has been. So I'm Anushila. I graduated in psychology honors from Lady Shriram College, post which I took a gap year to prepare for the UPSC. That's when COVID hit, and the first attempt didn't really materialize. That's also when I did my GGI policy consulting masterclass, and post that I decided to kind of leave UPSC and join governance consulting instead. So I joined a firm called Samagra, where I worked with various state governments across India for about 2.5 years. Post which I also explored the startup ecosystem by being part of a education startup called Mesa School of Business as part of their founding team. Having done that, then I moved to ISB for my MBA. And post my MBA now, I've joined Boston Consulting Group as a senior associate.
I mean, I mean this when I say this. I kind of see a mini version of Shatakshi, very similar trajectory, very similar path, except the fact I didn't appear for civil services. But I want to understand the Anushila in a much more personal manner as well. So, what is your family structure was like? What was growing up in India was like? Which year were you born? Do you have siblings? What were dinner table conversations were like? Was there any influence of your parents to appear for civil services, so on and so forth? So let's go back to the back and start with respect to what was the India that Anushila was growing up in?
Hmm. No, that's a very interesting question. So, I think right from childhood, I was, part of a very cultural ecosystem, so to say. And I'm a Bengali. So, growing up in a Bengali household, your household is very focused on not just you excelling academically, but also exposing you to different art forms, music, dance. So, there was a lot of all of that in addition to just also motivating you to pushing you to be your best academically as well. So I was always surrounded with books and all of that. So I think really grateful for that sort of upbringing. I had an elder sister as well, and I grew up very close to my grandparents. And I think they had a huge influence in just pushing me, motivating me to always do my best in whatever I am planning to, pursue. So the good part was that my parents never really pressured me to take up a certain stream or take up a certain type of job or career. So, to your question of was there any parental pressure on UPSC? No, there wasn't. It was fully my decision to take it up. In fact, I know that, back then there used to be, even now to a certain extent, there is a lot of stereotyping around, oh, you should just go for commerce or you should go for science, and going for humanities is like you're probably not academically bright if you're taking up humanities, and you can't really make a good career out of it unless you decide to do law, right? And that was very, very prevalent back then also. But I had always been naturally inclined to humanities subjects. I really loved reading about history, psychology, economics, and so I decided to take up humanities, even though I felt that conventionally, academically, I was strong. But that was a conscious decision that I took, that no, I don't see myself becoming an engineer. And at that time, you kind of take decisions back when you're a child based on the limited amount of information that you had. So the main pivotal, I think, decision point for me was what stream to choose and what further career path I want to take. Now, when I was deciding these things, the UPSC bug actually came in because I was always naturally inclined towards areas of social impact and wanting to do something for the country. And I think as you explore career options in social impact, the first and perhaps the only option that the society knows of is UPSC. So even in conversations with my parents or relatives or in general in school also, everybody would be like, okay, you've taken humanities, UPSC is the best option to go for. You study hard and you'll be able to make a good impactful career. There was no real discussion around what are the other options also available. Are there other means to also doing something in this area? And so, from that limited understanding, I kind of went ahead and made those choices. Later, now that I reflect back, I think there was a lot more exposure required, but yeah, which came on much later. But in terms of upbringing, schooling, I think it was very supportive, very as much exposure I could get to beyond academics as well, which I think really shaped me as a person, allowed me to look or create an identity not just as someone who is academically strong, but also create an identity beyond academics, pursuing some things that you like just for the sake of liking them.
Beautiful. I can just certainly visualize you enjoying the campus and culture of LSR. I was recently at LSR and I was just, my heart was so full the way they launched the event or the panel discussion. And I wrote about it also on LinkedIn. There was Shiv Strotam, there were Ragas, and my heart was full because here was the next gen who was still rooted in the culture and still trying to thrive in their career and ambition. So I can certainly imagine 20-year-old Anushila being on the LSR campus, having a great time, trying to find meaning to her life. With that, Anushila, let's talk more about UPSC because you have had a very good, and I would say from society's point of view, a very good successful rebounds out of the UPSC so-called trap because many people get into the sunk cost fallacy. Let's talk about how many attempts did you make, if you made any, how many years of investment did you put in terms of your education and picking up the curriculum, and most importantly, what made you decide that this is the moment I want to take a step back. I have had my enough attempts, but I want my way out because at GJ, for example, people join after 7 years, 6 years, 5 years of career gap. I think you have had relatively shorter, and I don't want to put any judgments. There is no one right answer. But I also feel people get into this mindset, oh, I couldn't crack it by 1 mark or I couldn't crack it by 2 marks, so let me reattempt it. So I want to understand that psychology of getting into it and then coming out of it.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the getting into it first.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, from school only, after I decided to take up humanities, UPSC was the only option. So I was very narrow in my focus. And retrospectively, I think that shouldn't have been the case. College is the place where you should actually explore other opportunities also. But because UPSC was just, I almost became obsessed with it, which is what happens with UPSC. I think it's such a big obsession in the society, almost coming from colonial times, that UPSC has a certain stature, has a certain status, and so I was in that mindset all my college years as well. So right from third year of college, I decided to get into the coaching, routine. So Monday to Friday was my college. Saturday, Sunday, 8 hours of preparation in Rouse IAS coaching centers, and that went on for an entire year. And post that, I again took a gap year also to further rigorously prepare. Um, the attempt was supposed to be in March 2020, which is when COVID actually hit and lockdown happened. Lockdown actually was announced about 20 days before my first attempt. And I was fully prepared and fully geared up, and I was feeling very confident about my attempt in March. But when COVID hit, and then there was just so much uncertainty, so much, just confusion around when is this exam going to happen? Is it even going to happen? And as a student, I think that's a very difficult place to be in, because you really don't understand whether I should be continuing my preparation, doing something else, or and so that entire 6 months phase, between when the attempt was supposed to happen and when it actually happened, which was October 2020, that entire 6 month phase, I think, was very, very important. One of the most difficult periods of my life for sure, because it was full of confusion, full of uncertainty, and it required a lot of resilience to be able to say that, okay, this is how this year's attempt looks like, and what am I going to do if I don't make it? I started really using that time to take a step back and think about, why did I get into this journey in the first place? I got into this journey because I took humanities. I wanted to do something in social impact, and everyone told me this is the only thing that you can do. And that's when I took a step back and thought about, okay, there is a certain end goal I have in life, which is I want to create an impactful career and hopefully be able to contribute to the development of the country. Now, that's a very broad goal, and there can be a lot of different means to achieving that goal. There are multiple means to achieving an end, right? And that reflection was the main reason why I started, thinking about maybe limiting my attempts and not going beyond one attempt. So I gave only one attempt. Even when I was starting my journey, I knew I don't want to give more than two attempts. And that's something that I kind of made a promise with myself before starting the preparation itself, because of this trap that you're mentioning. It's very easy to get sucked into this sunk cost bias that I have put in already 1 year, maybe let me just put in 1 year and then I will make it. In my case as well, I missed out the prelims by, I think, two marks, right? So it was a difficult decision to take, that this is it and this is the best I've given, and I'm happy with the amount of effort I put in. But if it's not meant to be, it's fine, right? And I know that if I put in that same amount of effort and hard work that I've put into UPSC into something else, then the payoffs might actually be much more. Payoffs in terms of the career growth and the career projection that I can, progression that I can have. So the main reason why I decided to kind of stop and limit my attempts to just one attempt was because the cost benefit analysis sort of stopped making sense for me. You have to do that analysis for yourself. What are the costs and what are the potential benefits? And for me, the costs were, that cost benefit analysis made sense in the first year. But the opportunity cost of you, especially in your 20s, spending just days and hours in your room, just studying books and books and books and not really getting exposed to the real world, that opportunity cost was extremely high for me, I felt. Second, there was also cost in terms of actual financial cost, right? Gap year obviously meant that I was not earning anything. And when COVID hit, there was a lot of, generally, there was a lot of uncertainty around the family business, my father's business. And so that again started cropping up in my head. Okay, now I need to start earning. And third, I think the cost was also in terms of mental health, because it just becomes a very lonely, very difficult journey for you to keep on preparing for years on years, right? So these, students who do it for 4, 5, 6 years, I think extremely resilient and takes a lot of courage to go down that route. But I kind of made that decision that no, this is when I have to stop, because I want to come out of this and I want to now, make a fresh beginning, make a fresh start. So, yeah, I think that's when I decided that this is it, and I started exploring a lot of other opportunities. And that was kind of in between the period between March and October 2020. So I knew that even when I was giving my attempt, I knew that, okay, if I don't make it, I have a certain backup or a certain different plan B to go to. And I think that thinking of plan B is quite important.
Very interesting. As I heard you, I realize when you get stuck in life, then you tend to start asking, did I really apply my mind while I was trying to get into it? That was the inception point. And I
Yeah.
loved how you've articulated your cost benefit analysis equation, because people kind of start losing rationality. And
Yeah.
I don't blame them. That's how human beings are. We kind of get succumb to our identities. Who am I? I'm a UPSC aspirant. And now there are shows that glorify UPSC aspirations, right? And why would I take a corporate sector job? They have to work 12 hours, 14 hours. They are being talked down. I will become a babu. I will have some status. So, not to once again trash UPSC, but I think no fixed identities can help anyone in life. And I'm speaking to the audience because just thinking that either I will be an entrepreneur or I will be a corporate or I will be in UPSC can kind of get into your way of learning and growing. So always have malleability around your personalities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about GGI. So, you said you did GGI 5 years ago, and I'm just so amazed and kind of also proud how we have maintained relationship with our alums. And I think it's always two-way. You have also played a huge role in contributing, being part of executive council at one point of time, so on and so forth. But what was the year? I understand your timeline,
Yeah.
March 2020 to October 2020. What
Yeah.
stage of life did GGI enter? And I'm not expecting you to sell or talk of GGI. Be very candid. What role did it play in your entire journey at the stage of life you were in?
GGI actually came in between this time only when I was doing all this reflection and kind of taking a step back. So I believe I did the masterclass somewhere around July or August 2020, right? So it was in between my UPSC preparation that I decided, okay, let me take, and it used to be like a 1 day format back then. I'm not sure how it's happening now, but it was a 1 day policy masterclass, full day from morning till night. And I was like, okay, 1 day I'll take a break from my UPSC preparation and I'll do this. And I think it was really good in that, that exposure to other types of career opportunities and really understanding, okay, there is a way of entering a different career path as well. It's not that because I've taken a gap year I'm doomed. There are certain things that I can learn, and it was a good primer to understanding how to get into a different career or how to pivot from this gap that I have. So it gave me a certain level of confidence, and that thinking of plan B. That's where it started. And I believe that after the masterclass, there was also a fellowship that ran for about, I think, 3 months, 3, 4 months, where we were with the team. We were kind of working on a white paper, and there were also buddies that were assigned to us from these consulting firms. So I think that regular buddy connect and all of that. Again, I would kind of go to my buddies and really ask them these questions that, what do I do now, and what are the options available to me, and how do I kind of make this pivot if I have to, if it doesn't work out. So I think that was really, really helpful. And therefore, once I actually got the result somewhere around, I think, end of October, November 2020, when I actually got the result that, okay, this is not happening, it was not like a very nerve-wracking kind of a moment for me. It was like, okay, this has happened, and I have a different plan B to go to. I know what to do. I know that I have to do consulting prep in this way, and I have to kind of do X, Y, and Z guesstimate prep in this way. And I just continued doing that. So from November, when I got my result, till about 2 months more, I kind of did prep alongside. Alongside, I also had a small job where I was just getting some, basic pocket money for myself. And along with that, I was just waiting for the right opportunity. So somewhere around January, February is when Samagra opened up. And then I was like, okay, this is the time. All the prep, all the hard work that I've put in, I'm going to apply and I'm going to kind of try my best. So Therefore, I think February is when I actually ended up joining. February 2021 is when I ended up joining Samagra. So I think GGI played a pivotal role in just making me comfortable with the fact that I have a plan B and giving me that kind of roadmap to make that transition. That okay, this is how you do consulting prep, this is how you kind of take decisions, these are the kind of firms that are available to you. Even that analysis, I remember, I think I was doing with my buddies. There were some check-ins I did with you and Naman as well, I remember. So there were all those conversations that gave me exposure to these different career opportunities and helped me eventually make that transition.
Very beautiful. So now enters governance consulting in your life, right? So once again, I'm imagining you are 23 by this time.
Yes.
You have had dreams, you had a vision of making a change in the world or bringing a change in the world. And this 23-year-old enters governance setup. What were certain eye-opening moments for me? Ki, "Bhai, this is different than what I imagined, both the positives and the negatives." And once again, we are talking to people who may be in similar shoes like Anushila,
Yeah.
who are contemplating public policy directly or UPSC. And I also want to give a caveat to the audience directly. I know a lot of people will listen to you and they will be like, oh, she was from LSR, a tier one institute. She had a potential plan B. But I also would want to give the confidence and the trust for everyone, Anushila. I have personally seen other students from tier two and tier three backgrounds also. But of course, it took a little bit more resilience who were able to bounce back. So I don't want that biasness to come because of which people are like, oh, she had certain benefits to also leave UPSC. Those benefits could be there for you, even if you're not from LSR, St. Stephen's of the world. Coming to you with respect to the governance experience.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think so. The good part about governance consulting was that you kind of get to work with the government without really being part of the government. So for especially an ex-UPSC aspirant like me, who had this dream of working for the society and working as part of the government, I think it was a really good kind of intersection between what I wanted to do and not really having to, without having to give the entire UPSC route, I'm still being able to work with them in some form of fashion. And I think it was really interesting because a lot of the times when you make this decision to go for UPSC, you are doing it based on, like you said, the glorified version of what you really do as an IAS. And when you actually start working with them, you realize, okay, actually the job of an IAS is also extremely difficult. And it's not the same glorified, Babu type job that you are saying. It requires you to also work for 12, 15 hours. It requires you to also go through immense amounts of stress. And it's not the easy, cushiony job that you imagine it to be. You think as an IS officer, you will be problem solving and you will be really making a lot of impact every day. But that's not how it happens, right? Every day you are probably dealing with hundreds and hundreds of files and doing a lot of firefighting administratively, and just putting water to fires. That's basically 80% of the job that I saw a lot of the IS officers do. But having said that, I think the positive part was that I came across a lot of officers who were very, very dedicated, very ambitious. So this idea of government officers kind of not being dedicated to the system and not wanting to do, I think that was an eye-opening thing, that actually no, there are a lot of people within the government who want to make an impact, who are willing to work, a lot to get to that impact with you. Um, in fact, they would push us as consultants to think above and beyond and really make an impact. So that was a really good positive side of the government that I saw. However, you would again see that as individuals they might want to make a lot of impact, but the system is designed in such a way that there are a lot of hurdles and it takes years to make some small incremental change as well. So those were some, I think, important realities that hit me, and I kind of came face to face with uh, the potential impact that you can make, but also the roadblocks and hurdles that are there in creating impact on ground. So it was a really, really interesting experience that way. And that's when I kind of also started thinking, and again did that same reflection exercise of stepping back and realizing, okay, for me, impact has meant a very narrow definition of social impact in terms of giving back to society. But is there also other forms of impact that businesses can create, which is why I kind of started thinking about maybe exploring the startup ecosystem also, and then maybe also thinking about how businesses can create impact. And that thought process, I think, started somewhere at Samagra. Yeah.
Very beautiful. I hold huge respect for Samagra to be doing the kind of work it is doing. Met Gaurav, I think, twice, and they've been doing fantastic work and at it since so many years. I also believe that 20s is also a lot about flirting with the ideas in careers, right? And I recently found something that I'm not sure if you are at a stage to agreed with it or not, but I am someone who changed 4 to 5 roles in my 20s. I was also flirting with the ideas. So eventually, I read this book which said that people who tend to leave their jobs quickly are actually running away from control. They're
Yeah.
trying to find freedom in life. I was like, damn, this is me, dude. And I didn't know I was changing so many roles.
Yeah.
Even at BCG, after a point of time, I was like, what's next? What's next? But with that, maybe we come and talk about your BCG journey. Congratulations for starting. You mentioned about your great experience when we were talking before the pod started. But how has been your early exposure, early impressions of the premium so called management consulting world? How is it impacting you with respect to definition of success, definition of influence?
Got it. Yeah, and I think before that, to what you said about 20s is for flirting with different types of roles, I fully agree with that. And I think I was also operating from that mindset only. That once I think in your 20s you have some playing ground and you can just figure out, okay, how does this different field feel for me, and how does that different field feel for me, and you have that opportunity to fail as well. So I think that is one thing that, in general, in your 20s, you should have that approach of not like being in a rush to commit yourself to a certain career. And I think part of the reason why consulting becomes so appealing to a lot of people is because of this reason, that you get to explore a lot of different industries and explore a lot of different, companies and people. You're almost changing your not role, but you are changing the context that you're working in almost every 2 3 months. And I think that's what makes it exciting also for young people to join consulting. So, with that, I think, that's primarily one of the reasons that I also joined BCG, because I wanted that exposure to a lot more. I'm still in my 20s, so I still am in that zone of, okay, I want to explore even more industries and see what, I like. Of course, there are certain industries that I'm more connected to already, like social impact, but, also exploring beyond that and constantly pushing myself to not limit to just a few areas of interest. So at BCG, I think it's just been about 3 to 4 months. So I think it's a very limited time. I've only been on one case so far. But in general, the experience has been very, very supportive, very helpful. You find such smart people around you that you constantly want to push yourself. And I think one value that they really, imbibe in you is chasing excellence wherever and whatever you are doing. In whatever you are doing, you have to have really good attention to detail. And when you see everyone around you kind of following that, you also start to imbibe. So I think people has been a huge, huge, uh, I think, takeaway or huge plus point for me while I'm at my work, because I think it really impacts your day-to-day growth and day-to-day mindset that you carry forward. So everyone being driven, everyone being ambitious around you really pushes you also to become like that. I think people-wise, BCG is really one of the best you can be at in terms of having a great peer group and great leadership. Along with that, they're also extremely helpful and supportive in kind of letting you transition to this new role, especially for someone like me who's done some bit of consulting but not management consulting before. So yeah, I've worked with one client so far, and had a lot of good opportunity to even present to really the top leaders of the client that I'm working with. So I think that way, just the amount of opportunity also you get at a young age is really, really good.
I completely concur. Reminds me when I started, and hands down, people is one of the biggest assets of BCG. And not just for BCG or consulting, many a times people don't realize it's your peer network and your bosses who motivate you to wake up and go to office every day. You may like a project, you may like the problem, but if you do not like the people, then things are going to get just so hard. And I a lot of GJ alumni practice, to be very honest, Anushila, is also inspired from BCG alumni practice. The kind of focus that they still have upon alumni like me and around the globe, it has left such a strong impression upon me with respect to how do you treat people, how do you really create a family when everyone is on their own trying to solve their own problems.
Yeah.
With that, we kind of take a full circle once again and come back to the UPSC point, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of people are still stuck and they have this fear of being left behind.
Yeah.
Here, I am not able to think as clearly as Anushila was at one point of time. Maybe COVID put a break on all of us and just pushed us, yeah, let's go back to the whiteboard and think. What would be your message to someone who's kind of feeling left behind in the UPSC journey?
And when you say left behind, you mean this is for UPSC aspirants who are currently in the process
Yes.
or who have already left the journey?
Who are in the process and who see their other friends going on Europe vacations, getting some good PCG offer, but they feel like they're left behind, but are not able to
Yeah.
decide, think, and find clarity.
Hmm. No, I fully understand. And while you are right, COVID kind of fastened the process a little bit. But at the same time, I had a lot of months like that. I think I had a good 2, 3 months where I was, to be very honest and candid with you, 2, 3 months of very, um, like, I was almost just locked up in my room, doing just thinking all day. I would not even, there were some days where I would not do UPSC prep at all because I was so unmotivated and I was so confused of where is this even going. Till the time you have that, end deadline that, okay, my attempt is coming in March, you're like, every day is like, oh, 12 hours, 12 hours, you're studying. That's how I spent my till March 2020. And then when there was no end in sight of when this exam is going to happen, I think I spent days and days just reflecting, just penning down my thoughts that, okay, this is why I started. And it was not as easy as it's sounding right now, right? Because this is a lot of hindsight thinking. But when I was deep in the process, there were like 1,000 paths that I was exploring and 1,000 doubts. I think you go through a lot of self doubt that, oh, I'm a fresher, I have no previous experience, who will hire me? I'm not earning right now, I'm putting pressure on my family. There is just so much um, thinking that you have to kind of get out of, negative thinking that you have to get out of, and then make that switch. So, for example, I think, like I said, I took up a job in between itself, right? I took up a job in between. There was a time where I was also teaching psychology to 11th, 12th graders because I wanted to make some money for myself. I actually did not even have enough money to kind of buy a laptop. I remember my laptop broke down in the middle of COVID. And I didn't want to put that additional pressure on my parents. And I was like, no, 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 I am going to buy my own laptop. Then when I got my job gave me a laptop, and from that laptop I started actually teaching psychology. And then from that money I eventually bought my own laptop like few months down the line. But there were a lot of those small, I think, challenges that I was going through at that time. So I fully relate to anybody who is in that zone, and it's a very difficult zone. All that you have to, I think, remember is that you can take your time in making this decision. There is no rush. You can take your time, think through, but make sure that you are sure of why you are doing this. Your why should be very, very clear. And where does your why come from? Your why comes from understanding what is the end objective. Like I said, for me, my why was because I wanted to contribute to the development of the country. I wanted to do something in social impact. That's why I wanted to do UPSC. There are some people who want to do UPSC because of the status factor as well, right? Which is, oh, I want that higher status, I want that respect in the society. There are some people who actually do it for money, right? Because they think, okay, you'll make a lot of money through UPSC through illegitimate means, which is, there are people like that I met in my UPSC preparation journey. So there are people who do UPSC for very, very different things. And once you are sure of why you are doing UPSC, I think it opens up a lot of different paths to you. If you are doing UPSC because you want a higher status, higher respect in society, you can again take a step back and think, okay, is UPSC the only respected career in the world? No, it's not. There are so many careers that are respected. And the only reason UPSC is respected even more is because of the colonial history that it comes with, is because of the glorification that society has given to it, right? So that's the, I think, introspection and reflection that you need to do. You need to be very honest with yourself that yes, this is what I want. I do want a higher status, and there's nothing wrong with wanting a higher status. But okay, what are the other job opportunities also that can get me to a higher status, and how can I get to that? So that entire process might take you a few days, few months, and that is okay, because you will go back on your own thinking, you will go back and forth with yourself, you will sleep on it, and then you will come to that decision. But I think that process is very important. In fact, I think it's a thing that you should do before even starting your UPSC journey. That be clear on why you are doing it. I think getting out of it becomes much more easy then.
I completely agree. I absolutely loved your point around writing and journaling. I recently read a quote and it just stuck so close to me. It said that you have no best friends in life. Your journal is your best friend. Because you don't lie to the journal, and the journal is a mirror. It reflects eventually what your true emotions and raw emotions are. So, to anyone listening, if you're stuck at a phase in life where you have anxiety, where you feel there is self doubt, just writing pages and pages and pages, eventually you realize what your answer is, and not, and you also realize whether you've been following the world's answer.
Correct.
With that, Anushila, I move almost towards the fag end of our chat. And my curiosity is that our generation, and with your generation, we're redefining success. A lot of us still are. That's not to say that success, what the society has imposed upon us, is wrong. If you want money, power, status, like you also said, very beautifully said, no judgments, then you run after that. But what is your current understanding of success at the phase of life you are in?
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. And I think that definition also changes with time. I think it used to be something very different back when I was like maybe 5 years back. But now I think success to me is growth. And by growth, I mean not just professional growth, but also personal growth. So, what I seek really is being able to ask myself, okay, 1 year ago, who I was, and 1 year now, have I grown in my career skill set? Of course. Have I continuously tried to learn beyond what I already know? And I think that is a huge just mindset that I want to imbibe. If I feel like I'm constantly learning, continuously learning and pushing myself, I would consider that as success. And on the personal side, also, being able to grow from the perspective of my health, from the perspective of, physically, mentally, socially. Am I growing in the relationships that I have? Am I growing in the physical health that I have? Have I been able to, achieve those targets that I've set for myself and grow in those? I think that is success to me. And yeah, I feel that there is no, with that definition, I feel like you will never really reach that point of success because you'll constantly be chasing growth. But I think that journey is the uh, thing that kind of gives you a sense of satisfaction that, okay, I'm pushing myself constantly. I think that is what I would consider growth.
I love that answer. I was reading what is the true definition of healing. A lot of people say that, hey, I'm trying to heal professionally, personally, etc. And the definition that stuck a chord with me so closely was that it's like shedding your skin and getting a new skin again and again. You keep on shedding, getting new skin. You keep on shedding, getting new. Like, this is crazy stuff, which means that you are constantly with the understanding, you're sitting with the understanding, I don't know enough.
Exactly.
about career, about life, about relationship. I will figure this shit out.
Exactly. And I think, especially with respect to careers, you also mentioned earlier, right, that it's very important to be malleable. It's very important to not like just stick to one thing and be like, okay, this is it. Because of the fact that the world is changing so rapidly. I think it was okay to do earlier, probably that you could be, you could have your certain skill set, and that skill set could take you, places for years. But now that the world is changing so rapidly with AI, I feel that we will always be, in a state of learning. We will have to be in a state of learning if we don't want to become obsolete in that sense. So I think just having that mindset, both professionally as well as personally, I think is
I
important.
want to pivot and very quickly check something. How much of AI are you using on your projects these days?
Quite a lot,
And
yeah.
this is ChatGPT or other versions? And if you can name, what would those be?
Mostly ChatGPT. I think there has been some use of Perplexity, Gemini here and there, but mostly I would say 80% has been ChatGPT. But even within ChatGPT now there are a lot of different models, a lot of different, there's deep research, then there's GPT-5 Pro, there's GPT-5 Thinking. There's a lot of different models. So there has been some upskilling that I've had to do in just understanding GPT and how to use it effectively. So I think there's very interestingly, I was listening to this podcast where they were saying, using AI is actually not a problem, but a lot of people are using AI now to blind faith. There's that recent report also of Deloitte that you must have heard, where there's Deloitte is actually being sued, I think, for uh, completely falsifying and GPT putting, hallucinating data and putting it in their report. So you have to be mindful of the way that you are engaging with AI. Also, not just because they might hallucinate and they might generate false data, but also because it's proven to lead to your own cognitive decline. The more you use AI blindly, you are using less of your own brain. And I think because it's so powerful as a tool, you do tend to get in that zone of, okay, why should I really engage with it? So I think it's been a lot of constant learning also on how do I engage with AI and how do I not uh, outsource my full work, but rather use AI for my own, scaffolding or my own support, rather than completely outsourcing. I think that is a challenge that we're all trying to figure out right now, of how to use AI effectively.
Completely conquer. I one day realized I sent it a interesting complex problem to solve, and the answer was in front of my eyes within seconds. And I was feeling guilty. Ki, dude, I made this brain what it is after solving problems. This way, my brain might just catch up with some rust.
Correct. Yeah.
Last question, Anushila, about your dreams. I do not want to limit your dreams to just career, life, or whatever, but
Mm.
everyone has dreams, right? We all have inner child within us. So, what does that inner child crave for? What does that inner child dream about at this stage?
Wow, that's a really good question, because mostly you ask for dreams in context of your career, right? Which is, okay, I want to become X, Y, and Z in future. So that's a really good question. I think um, the ultimate dream for me would be that I am, professionally speaking, I would want to be in a career where I feel like I am uh, impacting lives, and that impact thread kind of continues for me. That could be through businesses, that could be through something I do of my own, that could be through consulting, that could be through anything. But eventually, I want to create a certain, you know, skill set for myself where I'm able to see an actual change in people's lives. There are different ways of doing that. Right now, consulting is one way that I'm kind of exploring that, but there are also other um, avenues, maybe starting something of my own that I would like to explore further. And I think personally, see, I think it's a very simple answer. I don't think personally I'm dreaming for something huge. But personally, the dream would just be to have healthy, fulfilling relationships and a good, health. That's it. And I think those two things also require a lot of effort and hard work. But I would just keep it simple there. As long as I'm healthy and as long as I have fulfilling relationships, I think I would be very happy.
Very beautifully said. They say that a healthy man wants 1,000 things, and an unhealthy man just wants one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. That's a beautiful wrap up, Anushila, to our chat. Thank you so much for doing this and look forward to your next steps. And we are always cheering for your success and all of our alumni success.
Thank you so much. And it was lovely being here and having this chat.